taking notes from nobody.
Jaylen Brown.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at CELTICS TALK WEEKLY.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of the Celtics Talk Weekly. I am your host, Rob Haytayan. Joined with me is my co-host, Justin Lowe, and we are super excited to be back and talking about the C's. Justin, we got a fun podcast today, right? It's the off season. There's only so many times you can talk about the Jaylen Brown situation, which we will briefly cover in this episode because, again, there's more news, more drama, more things to discuss in that aspect. Outside of that, we got a fun episode, though. Before I get started, I say this, and I'm always going to say it, so I'm going to say it right now. If you're not following us on social media, go do that. I'm going to give myself a quick shout out. I just started up an NBA podcast called Inside the Arc. I've been producing a lot of content there. There's already 2 episodes. I'm doing 2 to 3 episodes weekly. That is _ Inside the Arc on Instagram. On Twitter, it is also Inside the Arc Pod. It'd be much appreciated. And Justin's got a little project cooking up as well, a new little podcast he's got. Still, Celtics Talk Weekly is our main goal, our main desire. But when you got guys who love talking and love making podcasts, you can't restrict us. So we're gonna have a lot of new content coming your way, guys. In our own aspects, expect to see both of us on everything.
These are like
Justin,
side quests. These are like side quests.
It's like a side quest. It's funny because I was writing up the script to do this podcast. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, like, God, what are we going to talk about, right? Like, it's been a month since the Porzingis trade, right around a month. Honestly, probably a month.
Yeah,
which is wild. And it's like, here we are, Jaylen Brown again.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay, so this has to be one of like the most like slow off seasons I think we've had in a while. Like, I mean, there's like been nothing like throughout the league. Like, there's been like nothing. I think like the best headline recently is Kyrie Irving playing in the Drew League. Like, there's been nothing. And, this whole Jaylen Brown situation, always going overseas, always in Vegas, always back in Dorchester. Like, it seems like the objective is to not sign the extension. Yeah. Like, let's see how long both sides can wait this out. That's kind of what it felt like.
It's so funny because if you look at my podcast journal, it says Jaylen Brown situation, briefly talking about it. Right under that, it says exactly what you just said. Vegas, Spain, Boston, question mark, what's next? So literally, like, you just stole the words from my mouth, right? It's like, it's weird because the start of the summer rolls around, off season, Boston, every report, Boston's number one priority, sign Jaylen Brown, extend Jaylen Brown. All right, well, then reports come out. Well, listen, they're going to meet in Vegas. Once Vegas, they should get the deal done in Vegas. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, Vegas went, and now there's reports saying that Brown's going overseas. But the deal should be done when Brown comes back to Boston. And now Brown's back in Boston, and it's like, is there a reason to maybe just worry, or are we not there yet?
I mean, so here's the thing, and it's like, I think when we look at this situation with Jaylen Brown, I remember we had a conversation about this exact same topic about a month ago on the podcast, and we in promoting the podcast, we posted a clip talking about how you and I were talking about, this is Boston's main objective is to sign Jaylen Brown. And a lot of the comments were saying, well, if it was, then, he would already be back at Boston. I don't think anybody's looking at Jaylen Brown's perspective. I think Jaylen Brown's looking for not more money, but more, incentives. Like, he's looking for more things. I think some things that are reported, he does not qualify, like the no trade clause. But to me, Rob, it's kind of, I wouldn't say concerning, but I think more confusing, because it's like, we sit here and we're not in the mind of Jaylen Brown, and we aren't Jaylen Brown. But what is holding Jaylen Brown back from signing a $300 million extension, becoming the highest paid player in the NBA? And let's face it, it's almost a guaranteed chance you make it to the conference finals, and a very high chance at making it to the NBA finals, in a place where you've already succeeded in doing both those things. The only thing you haven't succeeded at is winning when you got to the NBA finals. So, like, Why wouldn't you want to do that? And I'm not saying he wouldn't, but it shocks me that we're sitting here and quite honestly, Rob, we're a week away from August and he still has not signed an extension.
What do you do if he doesn't? Is there if you're Boston, are you like, all right, well, we got to move him now? Because you figure if he's staying, and this is where I'm at. I'm not worried yet. I think there are questions to be asked as to why it hasn't happened. However, financially speaking, it would make no sense for him not to do this because you got to play a year in Boston regardless.
Right.
You're going to have to be in Boston next year. So why not be in Boston next year? And I mean, if things don't go well next year, and we're going to talk about this later on towards the end, if things don't go well next year, then you have the conversation with the front office where it's like, listen, I've been here 8 years of my career. We have yet to do it. Maybe there's an option where I'm not here anymore, and we can find myself a place that I would like to call home. And what you can get back is just is leading you guys to success. So I'm like, if Jaylen Brown were to not sign the extension, then he's going into the next offseason. Sure, he's going to get the max, but the max will be 190 over 5. So it's like, why not get 307 over 5? And then it's a players driven league right now. So it's just like it would make no sense. So it's like, in my mind, maybe I'm just being a delusional Celtics fan, but the way I'm processing this right now is, okay, it's going to happen. When it's going to happen is the question.
Right.
Are you there, or like maybe not?
Right. So, I mean, I'm kind of, I just kind of mentioned that, it could be on Jaylen Brown's side, not necessarily Brad Stevens and Missoula's side, just everybody can, and Wick's side, making the deal done. But also, what if they just know that they're going to come to an agreement, that they're just not in any rush, right? Like there's other things, like Brad had to focus on the draft, the summer league, and Jordan Walsh, free agency, trying to go after some guys, re-signing Porzingis. I think the thing was with Porzingis is you risk trading Marcus. I don't think you trade Marcus Smart if Brad didn't think that Porzingis would re-sign with the Celtics. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we wouldn't just trade away our heart and soul for an insurance player, like you had mentioned earlier. I think that's kind of what we're doing with Jaylen Brown here. I would not be shocked if that's what it is why are we playing this waiting game? But at the same time, both teams are so comfortable that they know they'll come to an agreement, that there's other things that they might be able to prioritize before re-signing Jaylen Brown to that max deal or that super max deal. So, I mean, there's a couple things to it, but I mean, we could sit here all day and talk about this and spend a whole 45-minute podcast episode, or we could just spend 2 minutes talking about it and move on, because we're probably going to be bringing this up next week when we're in the same exact spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, no, seriously, you think about the offseason. It's just the only weird part to me is all the conflicting reports.
Yeah.
They've all been the same thing, which is like, okay, well, Brown's gonna sign and the Celtics want him to sign and it's their main priority. We were like, okay, if it's their main priority, then why did Porzingis get dealt first? Why did a Brissett signing get handled? Why did right? So it's like there's so much things. Excuse me, Boston's been one of the more active teams, I'd say. I mean, they moved Smart, they brought in Porzingis, they signed Brissett. They moved Grant for picks. They moved like 4 times in the draft to get a haul of the draft assets. Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, like, listen, it doesn't add up. I think it's obvious that Brad Stevens is making an effort to let the media know that, listen, we're not looking to trade this guy because of what happened last offseason with the Durant rumors. They got out, and I don't think that sat well with Brown. And I think Brad shut all that down early. I think there is a designated plan. Again, you make a phenomenal point. We could sit here for an hour and a half, just talk about Jaylen Brown. Ball handling, scoring, improvements, contract. Is it worth it? Is he not worth it? All of this. End of the day, he's a phenomenal player. I pay him. Let's see if Boston pays him. It should be interesting. And let's hop in to what I think is one of the more interesting topics we have had on the podcast, Justin. Now, when I say the 5 most impactful players to ever put on a Celtic uniform, top 5, we're going to go down the list. We're going to start at 5. We're going to take our turn. This should be good. I'm going to have you start. and then I'll follow.
That's crazy. 5. I thought I picked out 10. This is hard. I thought you said top 10. This is going to be an underrated pick, and you're going to raise an eyebrow, and I think Celtics Nation is going to raise an eyebrow. First of all, before we get called, what are those called, casuals, and you weren't even around for these days, like quite obviously, but with research and with the power of the internet, we were around for these days. Tom Sanders, excuse me, he's my number 5. Listen, him and Bill Russell in the front court, unbelievable tandem. One of the greatest defensive front courts this game will ever see. And I can tell you that right now. And these players are players that my grandfather grew up with. I wish I had my grandfather on the podcast. He could tell you the whole story. Right. Satch Sanders was one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA. And I've seen highlights of him and just film on YouTube and stuff. And just this guy was an absolute menace on the defensive end. So I'm gonna take Tom Satch Sanders at the 5.
Okay, listen, I like that. My number 5 is I'm going with Isaiah Thomas. Recent, you might say recency bias. You might say, oh, this, that. Isaiah Thomas is the modern day Celtics are what they are because of Isaiah Thomas. Boston lost their heart and soul in Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and went into an immediate rebuild. With that came a question. How long was this rebuild going to last? Boston is kind of in a time period where they've won only one championship in the past 30 years, and the 90s were rough, the mid-2000s were rough, but they got saved with a 3 to 4 year really competitive stretch with the big 3. IT comes around and he shifts the culture in Boston. What it means to be a Celtic absolutely is revived by Isaiah Thomas. The heart over height, Mr. Fourth Quarter, that was a real thing. Bringing Boston back on the map. That's what he did. IT put Boston back on the map. And getting guys like Al Horford and Gordon Hayward to come to Boston was a product of Isaiah Thomas. And when I think about the 5 most impactful players, when I think about where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and where this team is headed, I think right back to Mr. Isaiah Thomas.
I'm going to stay. First of all, love the pick. Absolutely love the pick. I don't want to sit here and disrespect. Isaiah Thomas is in my top 10. He's not in my top 5. And let me just be honest with you. Let me just be transparent with you. I'm not degrading Isaiah Thomas. I absolutely love and appreciate everything he did. I wish he could sign even just so little as an exhibition 10 and be with us with during the preseason in the first half of this season. But when I talk about impactful and when we're with this luxurious franchise in the Boston Celtics, I'm going to stick with the point guard, and I'm going to go with Rajon Rondo. Growing up, I grew up with Rajon Rondo as my point guard, and he is honestly the reason I fell in love with the game of basketball. And I so distinctly remember Game 2 in the Eastern Conference Finals in Miami. We did lose this game, but Rajon Rondo had this incredible 44-point near triple-double game. It went into overtime. Rondo was hitting everything, threes. I just think people think of Rondo, and he kind of faded out in Boston. Remember, he was here a year or two after Paul Pierce and KG left, and he kind of passed the torch to Marcus Smart. I think Rondo just had everything. I think when we talk about that 08 team, Rondo's not brought up enough, in my opinion. You know, we talk about the Pierce, the Garnetts, the Ray Allens. We even talk about, Kendrick Perkins. We don't really talk so much about Rajon Rondo that much. And I just think Boston doesn't win a title without Rondo. I really, truly believe that. I think Rondo was just the perfect complement to guys like Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. And I remember Kevin Garnett even saying he didn't want to be traded to Boston if Rondo was on the other end of that trade.
Right. You could argue that Rondo might have been the best player on that 2010 Celtics squad. I don't think that was crazy to say. Rondo was. People forget how good Rajon Rondo was with his time in Boston. I mean, that 2010, 2011, 2012 stretch, that 3-year stretch where that dude was balling. So,
I mean, don't forget that 08 team. Rondo was, I think, in his second year. He was drafted in 06. So, I mean, Rondo was young. And he was getting these triple doubles. And remind you, he's not a big guard. So for him to come out with, 9, 10, 11,
Yeah,
12
no, yeah.
rebounds, that's insane. So Rondo at my 4, but respect to IT at your 4.
Right. So my 4 is I'm going to go with Larry Bird.
5.
Yeah. So when I think of Boston, obviously Bird comes to mind. But and honestly, he could have been higher in Celtic history, but Bird's impact was more so on the NBA as a whole. He essentially saved the league. And what I mean by that is the NBA went through a stretch in the 70s where it was not by no means was it a popular league. There was this image to it where the league was too dark and that the players were all getting in scandals and this and that. And the NBA needed a product to latch on. And that's where Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came. They were two guys who were super competitive with each other, who brought this East Coast, West Coast vibe. Two sides, a kid from Michigan and a kid from Indiana, and they were college rivals. And it was so perfect and it was so homegrown and it was so natural that if you ask me most impactful players in NBA history, Bird's in my top 5. You ask me most impactful players in Celtic history, Bird's also in my top 5. I put him at 4 because those 80s he really ran alongside Magic Johnson out west, but I do think that there were these 3. My next 3 are higher up. Bird played with some phenomenal talent. Bird's impact with Boston didn't really have any effects outside the 80s, if you were to ask me. Then it's unfortunate because Bird retired and then the 90s were such a glooming gray sky over Boston basketball that unfortunately these other guys I think just their legacy carried a little bit on more so than Bird did, but I'm having Bird coming at my 4.
What am I at? I'm at my 3, so I got to pick wisely here. And it's going to be crazy because I think a player that might be on your list is going to be snubbed for my top 5. And Celtic Nation is going to hate me for this, but it's not Paul Pierce. It's Larry Bird. Because I agree with you 100%. In the late 80s, in the 80s, league was going downhill. And you mentioned Magic Johnson and Larry Bird essentially saved the sport of basketball as a whole.
Yeah.
What Larry Bird was able to do for the league, what Larry Bird was able to do for the Boston Celtics, just in my opinion, that's unimaginable. And that's such a rare breed that not even nowadays you see. I think Larry Bird impacted Celtic Nation as a whole. I think what made him so valuable as well was he was in this team like back then, Rob, in the 70s, 80s, even 90s. You didn't see like superstars or all-stars hop teams.
No.
You didn't. Larry Bird was here for the whole in Boston his whole career. He really embodied what it meant to be a Boston Celtic, and he was very proud of that. I wish he was more involved with the Celtics nowadays. I know he's with the Pacers, but you don't really see him come out to games, or you don't really see him in the Boston area. I do, for being not only one of the greatest Celtics of all time, but one of the greatest players of all time. You would love him to be in Boston a lot more. But I think Larry Bird is top 3. I think he's so easily top 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. My 3, it's the big ticket. It's Kevin Garnett. It's funny because I just watched his documentary, Anything is Possible, which was phenomenal. If you haven't watched that, go watch it because Kevin Garnett, I don't think people realize what that dude was really like in his early young days. I mean, this guy was an athletic freak. What he could do on both sides of the ball was phenomenal. He was the 04 MVP. But let's talk about his impact with Boston. We don't win a finals without Garnett. As important as Pierce was and as important as Ray Allen was, KG brought back what it was to be a Celtic, just like IT did. That idea of Celtic pride and slapping the floor and pounding your chest and screaming in defenders' face and just being so passionate about the game, diving on loose balls, right? Just all that passion he played with. We hadn't seen it since Bird and Russell and Hondo in those early days. It was missing. That there was something special about Boston basketball. KG brought that back. He brought Banner 17. He screamed Anything is Possible. And I still believe that Kevin Garnett's impact, I think it carried on to Marcus Smart, and I think Marcus Smart carried it on to the players currently playing for this team in this organization. KG's impact with the Boston Celtics, 2 finals appearances, 3 Eastern Conference Finals appearances, a Defensive Player of the Year, and an everlasting impact on what it means to be a Boston Celtic. KG, number 5, got put into the rafters. No one's going to wear it again for a good reason because he's the 3rd most impactful player on my list.
Love Kevin Garnett. Absolutely love KG. He's not on my top 5. I honestly thought we were doing a top 10. I misheard you before on our FaceTime call. He is in my top 10. My 2 is going to knock your socks off. It's going to knock a lot of people's socks off, but this one, it impacted the Celtics nation and it impacted the organization as a whole, not just from a player's perspective. Tommy Heinsohn at my 2. I think that is not so wild to say because Tommy Heinsohn impacted the Boston Celtics the minute he was drafted into the NBA. Growing up here in Mass, went to Holy Cross, grew with family straight out of here. I went to school with his grandsons. I think when you think about Tommy Heinsohn, he, in my opinion, is Mr. Celtic. Listen, I have notes right here. 11 titles, 5 MVPs, 12-time All-Star, 5-time rebounding champion.
Tommy Heinsohn had 5 MVPs.
That's Bill Russell. That's
all right. You're good. I was like
6. Okay, 8 NBA titles, 6-time All-Star, 4-time All-Second Team. He was the Rookie of the Year, drafted in 1956, 57. And not only that, coached with the Celtics. He also broadcaster for the Celtics, and somebody who my grandfather knew very well as well. And Red Auerbach had to let go of Tommy Heinsohn when he was coaching, and that was because he didn't want Tommy to get a heart attack because Tommy was so passionate. He was so passionate about the game, and we saw that growing up. We saw him commentate. We heard him. We watched him commentate. We didn't get the pleasure of seeing him playing live, but to me, one of the, if not the most impactful player in Celtic history.
When I think of growing up, when I think of the Celtics, I think of his voice. Obviously Mike Gorman, but when he screams the little guy and are you serious? And there's just him just getting into the refs, and I love that at 2. I love that at 2.
He used to have to get escorted in and out of both Philly and New York as a broadcaster because the fans were not pleased with him. And they just knew how Tommy was as a broadcaster. I will never forget, just a quick story, I'll never forget. This was one of my earliest days watching the Celtics. It was in a preseason game against the New York Knicks, and this is when Tommy used to travel. And Kevin Garnett gets this technical foul. Him and, I don't know who it was, Tyson Chandler were going at it, whatever. In a preseason game, Garnett gets ejected. Garnett's laughing. And Tommy Heinsohn is screaming his head off, going nuts. And I think he made some comment like, boy, the NBA is downright washed if this happens in the regular season. This is preseason, and he is livid. But just so many memories with Tommy Heinsohn growing up. And I wish I was around to see him play. I mean, really one of the true greats.
Yeah, if anyone wasn't able to, because last couple years in which he was around, he was in and out of the broadcast booth. He got switched to only home games, then even home games. They kind of, you got a sense that they were slowly bringing in Scalabrine onto the team. And if you weren't lucky enough to witness a Tommy Heinsohn broadcasted game, or we weren't lucky enough to see him play, but I'd
say it's a very
special,
very underrated 2 pick.
Yeah, no, I like that. He was just a special human being. My number 2. It's an interesting one because you say Celtic and you wouldn't necessarily think him, but my number 2 is Len Bias. Drafted in 88, was supposed to be the next best NBA player in the league, the best college player of all time, paired with Larry Bird. was supposed to be basketball royalty throughout the 90s. The Celtics were supposed to be yet again looking for 5 more rings. When you look at the trajectory of since the 90s, we're going to say Bird retired in 92. We'll say since 92. Those terrible years, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, Pierce comes around in 98. That's all a product of Len Bias. Those early years in the 2000s, product of Len Bias. The 2008 championship, product of Len Bias. And you figure if this guy didn't sadly and tragically pass away, the 90s, we probably got 3 more rings. The 2000s are different. Pierce probably isn't a Celtic. Garnett probably isn't a Celtic. Jason Tatum probably isn't a Celtic. Jaylen Brown's probably not a Celtic. It changed the history and the trajectory of the Boston Celtics. And when you think of the butterfly effect, that's what I think of. I think of Len Bias, and how drastically things could have been different. And it pains me, and it's a really sad reason why he's on my list at number 2. But when I look at most impactful, how it impacted the organization, unfortunately, impact can happen in a positive or negative way. And unfortunately, this one was negative, but he comes in at my number 2 because you can't tell the history of the Boston Celtics without mentioning Mr. Len Bias back in 1988 on draft night.
You know who else you can't mention? The most impactful player on the Boston Celtics.
I think, is it going to be, I think our number 1's the exact same.
Blake Griffin.
No,
it's Bill Russell. All jokes aside,
it is
Bill Russell.
It
the
is
infamous number 6. Rest in peace. Just passed away months ago. I'll read you his stats again. I read it to you earlier. 11 titles, 5 MVPs, 12 All-Stars, 5-time rebounding champion. He had his number. Retired with the Celtics. Now, I think also what helped Bill Russell, and I'm not saying Russell was carried, but what I'm saying is when we look at the most impactful players, Russell played with 2 of them on my list in my top 5, Satch Sanders and Tommy Heinsohn. All of those guys just have just embodied, again, we use that word, embodied what it meant to be a Boston Celtic. Bill Russell, one of the most heavily leading faces in the entire association even today. He was so active on and off the court. His community work was unmatched. I think Bill Russell is the Boston Celtics. When you see the logo, when you see the jerseys, when you see the green, I think of Bill Russell. You know, we talk about who do you see when you see this picture? Some people say Pierce, some people say Tatum, some people say Larry Bird, Parrish. I say Bill Russell, and I will forever see Bill Russell. And I think, you know, if you want to talk about who is the GOAT and who impacts winning and who has won, Bill Russell to me is that guy. I'm sure you agree, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about Bill Russell of yourself.
No one's gone through in sports what Bill Russell went through as a player, plain and simple. You talk about going through hardships and going through tough times. People today think the bubble. Oh, the bubble was difficult. Well, no, what Bill Russell did was difficult. And I'm not calling the bubble not difficult, but when you look at how much he succeeded and what he gave the city and what the city at the time gave back to him, his loyalty, his winning, his attitude, his ability on the court, I mean, it just all screamed greatness. And Bill Russell, it seems like he's like a ghost almost, right? He can't be real. This idea of Bill Russell, it seems like a fairy tale, a novel. And you don't get many people in life like that. And that's why I think Bill Russell, if you were to ask any Celtics fan, they're giving you really ask any fan who's the most impactful player on the Boston Celtics, they're going to give you Bill Russell because of everything that dude went through and his ability to just be great in not just basketball, in all aspects of life. There was no one who did it like Bill Russell did it. And some people just are different in life, and Bill Russell was bigger than basketball. He was bigger than life itself. And I think it's really cool that I can call myself a Celtics fan because I can lean back on Bill Russell. what it's like to play for the Celtics and be able to lean back on Bill Russell must be insane if fans feel pride in knowing that Bill Russell put that uniform on.
I mean, you talk about the players, and one player who was on your top 5 and in my top 10, Kevin Garnett. I mean, he
Right?
was a spitting image of what Bill Russell was to Boston in terms of wanting to win, and it just how he played. He played hard. He did not want to put forth a losing effort, even if it came with a win. Right, like Kevin Garnett, Bill Russell, they wanted everything. They wanted everything to be almost perfect, right? They're almost like perfectionists.
Right.
And if I have to, they made sacrifices. I think that's a very good word. Is they made sacrifices,
Yeah, that's
and
a
they
good
were
word.
able to make
Right.
sacrifices. They didn't, and somebody like KG, they didn't have to be the guy, right? Like when we talk about these guys, that doesn't mean you have to be the best on the team at all. Like when we talk about, I brought up Rajon Rondo. Was Rondo the best team on the 08 team? Absolutely not. Was Heinton out of between Kuzi, Sanders and Havlicek and Russell, was Heinsohn the best player all around? No, but the most impactful player. And I think Bill Russell is, in my opinion, the GOAT of Celtic Nation and in the GOAT of Celtics history, just both on and off the court.
You said it best. I got no debating you there. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, guys. There was when you think about most impactful players in C's history, we're not debating number one. You really can't.
I think
this next. Yeah.
I was gonna say I think it's very kind of like we're talking about the Celtics here, and like same thing. Like we would go talk about the Lakers, like. You can't really argue with a lot of them because they're all great in their own different ways. Like there's so many guys.
Well, I think there's a lot of room for argument with the Lakers, right?
Really?
Kobe, Magic, Kareem, Shaq. I mean, there's a lot of guys. If you think about this, right? The Lakers are such a different franchise than Boston, right? They're both great in their own respected areas, even though I despise and hate the Lakers. But think about like if you look at the Lakers' history, right? You got Kareem who showed up, and Kareem won 5 rings with them.
Yeah, Wilt.
You got Wilt, but like Wilt didn't win anything. He got beat down by Boston. But then like you can you say Kareem without saying Magic?
Right.
So you're thinking about greatest. Okay, well,
Yeah, I
is
guess,
Kareem the greatest? But then you also got Magic. So is Magic the greatest? Because you can't say Magic without Kareem. And then you move forward. It's like, okay, well, is Shaq the greatest? But you can't say Shaq without Kobe. And then is Kobe the greatest? I mean, he was there for 20 years, which is the longest.
Right. Nah, I get it.
Right. So there's so much debate with the Lakers. When Boston, it's like, oh yeah, Bill Russell, 11 rings.
I know.
I mean, the
like,
dude.
How can you argue that?
It's just like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like, if this was a Lakers podcast, we could sit here for 30 minutes and debate who is the most impactful Lakers player of all time.
Yeah,
like no question.
I think that's fair to say looking back at it. But with Boston, I just feel like your top 5 should so easily consist of at least Larry Bird and Bill Russell. There goes 2/5.
Right.
There goes 2/5
right.
of your 5. And then, I guess the other 3 could be up for debate, but it really doesn't really matter. I mean, impactful is impactful.
Yeah. I mean, I could think of so many guys that aren't on my list. I mean, Hondo's not on my list. Kuzi's not on my list. And those are 2 names right off the top of my head. Pierce isn't on my list.
Smart.
I mean,
maybe not Smart in your top 5, but I mean,
maybe not Smart. I don't know. Yeah.
Impactful though.
But yeah, impactful. Look at the last 9 years of Celtics and where they're at. Marcus Smart.
Right.
So it's like, that's the interesting thing with Boston, where it's like it's such a weird and rich history where there's so many up and downs, and they haven't the Celtics. I hate to say it, they haven't been royalty since the 80s.
No.
They have been competitive over the past 20 years since 08, so 15 years. But they haven't right. The Lakers, on the other hand, it's the opposite. The Lakers were a laughing stock of the league up until the 80s, but since the 80s, they've done pretty damn good for themselves. So it's really interesting if you think about it.
It's also easy, though, I feel like, in my opinion, for LA. It is LA. It is Hollywood. It is like where dreams are made of. So like you would probably see guys like LeBron James there, right? Like LeBron and Anthony Davis. I mean, we saw a team, and even though these guys were past their prime, but we saw a team that consisted of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, and Rajon Rondo. Like, even though some of those players were past their prime,
it's where players finish their careers.
Right. It's just the names that go through in and out in a Laker uniform are just like top of the heap.
Yeah, I think that it's like Boston's what they hold on to, what they latch on to is that rich history of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s where it's like, listen, you put a Celtics jersey on, you play for pride, you play for Boston, you play for this and that. Lakers, it's like, what are you pitching? You're pitching Sunny Hollywood. If I'm an NBA, what do I want? Sunny Hollywood, $190 million, or Boston, Massachusetts at $190 million? You ask me, I'm going to give Boston, Massachusetts every single day. It's how I was born and raised, baby. You're not going to take that out of me. But if you were to ask an NBA player who was born and brought up in Illinois or in Oklahoma or in Texas, wherever it may, Miami, wherever it might be, they're probably going to pick LA. So that's what the Showtime. And again, honestly, we're kind of getting into so much about the Lakers, but Showtime Lakers, right? They changed how the Lakers, Jerry Buss and those guys. I mean, you talk about most impactful people in Lakers history. Those are more names that you could talk about. Let's pivot here. There's a trend going on, Justin, and I know you're a part of it. It's the chart trend. You know what I'm talking about? Crossover. So we got Celtics crossover.
All right, bet. Show me. Do we have a grid?
No. The grid will be made later. I got current, which is a current Celtics player. You know, usually there's 3 teams. Yes. Well, we're doing 3 versions of the Celtics players.
Okay.
A current Celtics player, a past, present Celtics player, which is a past player who's still in the league that played for Boston, and then a retired Celtics player.
Okay.
Let's start. Name me a current Celtics player who has made an all-star team.
A current Celtics player? Well, if we're going rarity, I'm going Blake Griffin. Or does rarity not really matter?
I mean, I'm not. I don't care.
Okay. So okay.
You can say whoever.
Okay. All right. Blake Griffin.
Give me a past, present Celtics player who's made the all-star team.
A past, present, meaning they're still in the league? Who's
Correct.
made an all-star team? Oh, jeez. I can't think of anybody. I can't think. Still in the league?
You want a hint?
Yeah, I guess.
He just signed with a new contract with this new team.
He just signed a contract with his new team? Kemba?
Yeah. I mean, Kemba would work. He's not retired, so I can give you Kemba.
Okay. Give me Kemba. Who did you pick?
It's Kyrie Irving. That's my name. Kyrie was an all-star.
He didn't even come through my mind. All right.
All right. A retired Celtics player that was an all-star.
There's so many. Give me Bill Russell.
There you go. All right. A current Celtics player that was a top 3 draft pick.
Jason Tatum.
A past present Celtics player that's a top 3 draft pick.
Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, there you go. A retired Celtics player that was a top 3 draft pick.
A retired Celtics player who was a top 10 draft pick. Wait, what was the top 10 or top 3?
Top 3.
Oh, top 3? Shoot, man. Was Bill Russell top 3? No, I already said Bill Russell, though.
You already said Bill, yeah.
Pierce came in at 10, right?
Yeah.
A retired. Give me a hint. Do you know?
He was hell yeah, I know. He was on my 5 most impactful players in CEC's history.
Oh, Kevin Garnett.
Nah, he was pick 5.
Isaiah Thomas was 60. Larry Bird was what was Larry Bird?
Bird was 1.
Was he 1? Yeah, give me Larry Bird.
Oh no, Bird was 6. Bird was 6. I was wrong.
Later. I know Rondo wasn't 1. Or Rondo wasn't top 3.
So he wasn't on my impactful list. I lied.
Why, you thought it was Bird?
I thought it was Bird. I thought Bird was picked. Yeah. But Bird was drafted in 78, but they drafted the draft rights to Larry Bird, which then gave them right.
What was Len Bias?
I want to say pick 1.
Give me Len Bias. I mean, he technically, or yeah, give me Len Bias.
Yeah, he was picked 2.
Yeah, give me Len Bias. I didn't know if that would that
All
slide.
Right.
I know he didn't play technically.
He's a Celtic, man. Once you're drafted by Boston, you're a Celtic. Give me a current player who made the national tournament in college, the March Madness.
Oh God, dude,
who played in March Madness?
Dude, college is like the least of my. A current Celtic that played in March Madness, Sam Hauser.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't he? Yeah, he played.
Yeah, for Virginia,
Yeah,
for the Virginia squad.
He started at Marquette, then went to Virginia.
Give me a past, present Celtic player that played in the tournament.
Paul Pierce. No. Sorry.
You've already used Pierce, I want to say.
No, I didn't. Past, present Celtic that played in the tournament. Give me Rondo. He's not retired. Yeah, give me Rondo. He's a free agent.
Yeah. All right, now give me a retired Celtics player that played in the tournament.
Scott Pollard. Played for Kansas.
There you are. Right. There you go. All right, clap it up.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
If
I had it in front of me, bro.
Well, you know what? When it's all cut up and it's put onto a reel, it's going to look like you did it real fast. So don't worry about that. That's the power of editing for you. All right. Well, we got another fun segment. It's like this or that, but I'm going to call it he or him. Celtics all time. Who are you taking between these players? All factors apply, not just talent. Marcus Smart or Dennis Johnson?
Marcus Smart or Dennis Johnson? DJ. No. The recency bias. Okay, yeah, we'll stick with DJ. The recency bias me wants to go with Smart, but I'll stick with DJ.
I like the DJ pick. That's who I'd go DJ as well. That's the starting point guard for 3.
I know.
A 3-time NBA champs.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Kevin McHale or Kevin Garnett?
Oh my gosh, dude. Give me Kevin McHale. Just absolutely friggin' automatic in the post. Give me Kevin McHale, the best post-up player in the history of NBA.
I'm going KG. Not gonna lie, KG. Dog. Next one. This is gonna be tough. Larry Bird or Bill Russell?
Bill Russell. 10 times out of 10. The GOAT of Celtic history.
Yeah, if we're talking Celtics, I'm going Bill. If we're talking all-time talent, who do I want on my team? I'm drafting Bird before I draft Russell. If we're talking talent, what Bird could do was just simply different. As great as Bill Russell was, if we're talking individual talent, Bill Russell was in my opinion a top 5 most talented player of all time. Yeah.
Okay.
Trust. Next one. All right. This one I think is like a really underratedly tough decision. Tony Allen or Avery Bradley?
Oh, you know what, bro? Avery Bradley had this. I'm gonna go Tony Allen, but no. Listen, Tony Allen's a dog, unbelievable talent. But let me tell you why I wouldn't. I'm taking Tony Allen, but let me tell you why I wouldn't mind taking Avery Bradley. Because Avery Bradley is versatile. He can play both ends of the floor. He has a better offensive game. He has a better shot. I think Bradley, his best shot was not his corner 3. His best shot
was his pull-up mid.
Dude, his pull-up mid off a screen was unfriggin' imaginable. Like, you could not stop that. That was just so lethal. I'm going to take Tony Allen, plus he's got a title with the Celtics. I get it. Avery Bradley technically has a ring with the Lakers, but I'm taking Tony Allen. I think he's going to make a more impact on my team.
I don't think Tony Allen was ever as good as 2017 Avery Bradley. So I'm going AB because he was like arguably the second best player. I mean, obviously Horford, but I mean the dude could be the second best player any given night on that 2017 squad, and they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I'm going AB. People forget about Avery Bradley, man.
I know.
He was a year before Tatum got drafted, where that dude was. Do you remember? You want to talk about? I hate to get off topic, but like trades that kind of sucked and hurt as a Celtics fan. Avery Bradley is when he got traded to Detroit
for Marcus Morris.
I mean that, yeah. AB. I remember the 2013 game against the Knicks. KG and Pierce's last game. I was in attendance for that. Game 6, where we were so shy of making one of the craziest comebacks ever. It was a huge run.
Yeah.
And that was Avery Bradley. And that was the first time where Avery Bradley was like, there was like a 2-year stretch where Avery Bradley was like a top, a good player in the league.
People also don't realize early in Bradley's career, he was not he was not really a consistent shooter.
No,
he was strictly defense. He had to stretch his game out. And that Knicks game, I remember that. I was coming home from a cruise, and we were down by like 24 with like 7 minutes left, and we almost came back. Bradley had like 3 straight pick your pocket, dunk it down the other end. Jeff Green,
Avery Bradley. I don't want to hear any Avery Bradley disrespect ever, because that dude was for real. All right, next one. This is a big one, arguably the biggest one. Paul Pierce or Jason Tatum.
Paul Pierce or Jason Tatum? Damn. I think it's Jason Tatum. And that's not recency bias. I think Tatum has been able to do more with less around. And that's with the most respect possible. I think, but at the same time, you look at it and you have guys like Jaylen Brown, you have a developing Robert Williams, and then you have a Al Horford who has given so much to this team. But the only thing Jason Tatum has yet to deliver, and he's still such a young player at 25, is an NBA title, but he's been in the conference finals 5 of his 7 years. He's been to the NBA finals once. How many times has he been an all-star? Is it
4?
Fourth? Yeah, like I'm going to go Jason Tatum right now. Like I'll respect to Pierce. I love what he did. I love what he was able to do in Boston, but I'm going to call me recency bias. I don't care. I'm going JT. I grew up with Paul Pierce, but I'm going JT.
There's 2 ends of the spectrum when I think about Pierce Tatum. Talent. Who's more talented? Jason Tatum. Pierce, people don't really, if Paul Pierce is one of those players that I really believe that he was stuck on a bad team and he won a ring towards the later half of his career with a really good team in Boston, in that 08 team. But I mean, if you give him KG, Pierce and Garnett, if they teamed up 5 years prior, they have 3 rings.
Right.
And Pierce was really a great player. So obviously I think it's unfair to Tatum because his career hasn't finished yet. And I also think it's unfair to call Tatum better than Pierce because it's like Pierce was such a dog and was such a phenomenal scorer.
Right.
But let's not sugarcoat things. I don't think at any point in Pierce's career was he considered potentially a top 3 player in the league. In a very talented league at that. So I think I'm going to have to pick Tatum. Once Tatum gets a ring, which will happen, I don't think it's close. Unfortunately, I love you, Paul Pierce. You're the truth. But Tatum has the potential to be like top 3 Celtic all-time talent. If he can deliver some chips. And that's just, I'm going Tatum. You don't. We both said it, so we don't disagree. All right, so this is the last. We got one more topic to talk about. One question. It's an overarching question. Kind of a little different type of pace here. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the episode so far. I think this might have been one of my favorite episodes to record in a while. It's been super chill. But I got a question for you, Justin. What happens if the C's don't do it this year?
It's yam season, summer league. I don't know. I mean, dude, like, here's the
is
thing,
it?
though. I hate that question, and let me tell you why. Because I understand that Brown will now have played his 9th season, and Tatum will have played his 7th or 8th season. But I'm still sticking with these guys who don't. Why split them? I don't know, dude. I don't know what happens. I don't think the Celtics blow it up. But there's also a definition.
Not at all.
But then you also have to ask the question of, well, define blowing up, because blowing up could be just getting rid of Jaylen Brown. Blowing up could be just getting rid of Jason Tatum. Blowing up could just be just demolishing the whole team and saying goodbye to your core. I think what the Celtics have right now is unbelievable, and I think that if the Celtics don't win this year, I think it's still I think it's still win now mode, because you would have extended Jason Tatum, you would have extended Jaylen Brown. If they do, you would have extended Chris Porzingis. Obviously, you still have Robert Williams under contract. Al Horford for another year. So I genuinely don't know where the Celtics go if they don't win it this year. But I'm kind of I agree with you.
You ask me, where do the Celtics go from here if they don't do it? It's a question that I think you got to ask. You have to ask that question, because it's funny. If you asked me last year, I'd say the Celtics are on the edge of the biggest season in their in recent modern history, right behind the 08 year. Last season was. But I mean, the more you think about it, that season went downhill quick. Last season. It started with the Ime situation, and once the Ime situation happened, that's when I think expectations should have just shifted. Because when your head coach of a championship team gets essentially suspended and the players don't get a good reason for it 2 days before camp starts, you're in for an interesting year. So I don't think last season was the biggest season in recent modern Celtics history. It's this season. They're coming off of a Game 7 Eastern Conference Finals loss. You move the heart and soul of the franchise for a great talent in Porzingis and what you needed. You keep Brogdon. You keep White. This is the most talented team we've had in a while. We said that last year, and I think the team got better. So what happens if they don't win it this year, you ask me? Tatum's staying, I'll tell you that. Tatum isn't leaving. But I think you take a look at the construction of the roster and you think to yourself, where can we go? You do a reflection. What needs to change? Is it Brown? Is it Tatum? Is it Porzingis, right? You just reflect and you look and you try to find answers. You want my prediction, Justin? This is the year they do it. It's the year it happens. It's either this year or next year. And because when you look at a trajectory of great players' careers, year 7 and 8 is the year where they take off, where they just, the game, it slows down and there's a switch. That switch is going to be flipped for Jason Tatum. I talked about on Inside the Arc, where I think this is Tatum's year.
Yeah.
It's going to have to happen. If it's not this year, I'm going to start questioning it, but I'm not going to overreact. Because again, year 7 for Tatum, we saw it happen in year 8 for LeBron. We've seen it happen in year 9 for Durant. We saw it happen like in year 8 for Jordan. So I just think it's because this team, we've talked about this, had just had such early success when they're rookies that it felt super sped up, when in reality, the first 5 years of their career are supposed to be meant kind of, struggling to get to the playoffs and maybe making one good playoff run and grabbing a couple all-stars. So it's like, if they don't do it, there's going to be questions raised, but stay your course.
Yeah, I think before I don't know what happened. I lagged out, but before I lagged out,
your mic is in
What was that?
You got to switch your mic. It's coming out of your computer. Just hit settings and then audio.
Settings. Good.
Here you go.
All right. Before I lagged out, I was basically just talking about like I genuinely don't know anymore. I agree with you that I think Tatum stays, first of all, but I think with Boston, and you have a lot to figure out this year. By this time next year, if the Celtics don't win, because so here's the thing, like Rob, they took a major risk in trading Marcus Smart. Like I don't think people understand
Huge
that is
huge risk.
That is one of the biggest risks you can take, and I get it. I understand that, like, oh, Smart's not giving you the 27, 8, and 6, but when we talk about impact players in recent Celtics history, Smart's up there, right? So I think it's a risk that Brad had to take, but I also think he's going to have to probably make a bigger risk next off season. What does that bigger risk entail? I don't know, but we could see a lot change. But I agree with you, Rob. I'm kind of, us as Boston fans, we're very spoiled. So I guess you could say we're kind of sick and tired of saying, "Oh, there's always next year," or "Oh, we'll be right back." And then we have to sit through an 82 game regular season and then go through the trials and tribulations of a playoff run just to fall short again. So I don't know. I really, genuinely, Rob, I don't know what Boston does after this year if they don't win it. I have no clue. I couldn't tell you.
It's make or break. When I say that, I don't think the team gets dismantled if they don't do it this year. And quite frankly, I thought there was a really good chance that they were going to run it back, and then if it didn't happen this upcoming season, then Smart was going to get moved. So I think Brad went a year early, and quite frankly, I'd rather be a year early than a year late, if you ask me, in the NBA. So I think the team got better. Porzingis is 27, Brown's 26, Tatum's 25. I think you give it until Tatum's 29 at least. If you want, you give it 4 years with Tatum. And then if you still haven't won it with Tatum, obviously you keep him around, but then I think you start to look at restructuring the team and whatnot around him. Because even when you're 29, you still have 4 or 5 years of your prime left. So there's just so much Jason Tatum basketball still left in the tank that you don't jump the gun on anything. And that's that. As fast as people's brains work these days, you don't. So yeah. So this has been a great episode. I think this is a fun one, Justin. We had some good topics of discussion that we are new. I think that's where the off-season podcasts are going to be at from here on out. Once free agency is over, there's just not a lot of the late July through August. There isn't a lot of to talk about outside of just like history and personal experience with the Celtics. And we got some great guests lined up in the works, which is actually really wild for us to say. These guys that we've been talking to, Justin, it's surreal because it's like we're getting inside people who work with the players. We're getting videos from them and we're getting texts from them, and it's just super cool. So I want to take a second, and I know we do say this a lot, but truly thank you guys. We're still so small, but it's still, we're getting to a point where it's just like for two kids who came together, who had no idea who each other were, who had no idea what this vision I had was, and to see it play out how it's been playing out. We're still in the storyline of Celtics Talk Weekly. We're still, and you ask me, I think we're still in chapter 1 or 2 of a long storyline. So, but with that being said, guys, like seriously, the love you guys show, the support you guys show us, it does not go unnoticed. We see all of you guys commenting, the messages you send us, the comments on YouTube videos, the likes on YouTube videos. I see all that support, all that love. It's crazy. Celtics Nation is the best fan base in sports. And I know, Justin, you agree with everything I got to say. So seriously, guys, thank you.
Yeah, I do agree with everything you said. I think it's just really cool how, obviously we've had help from from Seamus and Ian and Jack.
Yeah.
But I think it's, you know, or if I remember our first podcast episode you and I shot, and we didn't even know each other. This was back when I ran Celtics Rising, like on a day-to-day basis. And you had me on, and the podcast was about an hour long, but our conversation was probably about like 3.5 hours long. After we cut the stream, we kept talking. And I think we've created something awesome, and we've had phenomenal people who have helped us out over the past couple of years. And they certainly don't go unnoticed. David, who's helped us run our Twitter account, and that's slowly growing now as well. But thank you for the support. We're really excited for this upcoming season. We think not only will it be a great season for the Celtics, but we think and we hope it'll be a good season for us for coverage wise. Coverage and content. So we're gonna keep the content rolling. I literally just we just hit 7.4K on Instagram. So, we're going for the 10K before opening night, which is in like 2 months, 3 months. So, that might be a little, crazy, but with the way we're growing and the way that we're producing content and the way you guys are supporting our content and allowing us to produce that content, that we greatly appreciate it. We can't say it enough.
Media passes. That's the next step, baby. That's what we're gunning for. We're gonna bring, and it's kind of cool because I know we're gonna get there, dude. I know we're gonna get there, and
we manifest a lot, by the way.
And it's gonna be so cool because once we get there, it's gonna be such a unique and dynamic way that Celtics have been covered. It's so exciting, guys. Thank you so much again. Super fun episode. Looking forward to the next one. Next one should have a special guest on it, so stay tuned for that. If you're not following us on all of our social medias, you know the drill. Go do that right now. I'm Rob. Next to me is Justin. Guys, until next time, go C's.